I'm a 34-year-old man, and until a few months ago, I thought my family was normal. Strict, traditional, maybe a little intense about loyalty, but normal. I grew up surrounded by men who took pride in their legacy, their unbreakable bonds, their deep-rooted traditions. Every man in my family, my father, my uncles, my grandfather, went through the same rites of passage. It was just how things were done. No one questioned it. And when my time came, I followed without hesitation. Then my wife, Claire, 31F, found out what it really meant. And now, she wants nothing to do with them. Or me. It all started after we got married. Claire had always been curious about my family's traditions, mostly in a light-hearted way. She'd tease me about the secret meetings the men had, the way my uncles would pull me aside at family gatherings to talk in hushed voices, the way my father would give me knowing looks whenever she asked about our customs. I brushed it off. I told her it was just a bonding thing, something passed down through generations. It wasn't meant to exclude wives. It was just for the men. She rolled her eyes but didn't push. 1 week after our wedding, my father and uncle took me on a trip. It was presented as a rite of passage, the final step in truly becoming part of the family. I didn't think twice about going. It wasn't a choice. Really, it was expected. My father had done it, his father before him. It was tradition. The initiation itself was a mix of old customs, solemn speeches, and a final act, a financial and personal sacrifice. I was made to sign over a portion of my assets to a secret family trust, ensuring that I could never fully sever ties. But worse than that, I was required to cut off a close friend outside the family to prove my loyalty, sending a message that no one mattered more than them. I never saw it as a betrayal. Not then. Months passed, and life went on as usual. Claire and I settled into marriage, and my family treated her warmly, if a little distantly. The wives in our family were never deeply involved in certain matters. They weren't exactly shut out, but there was always an understanding that some things weren't meant for them. Claire noticed it. She asked questions. Why did my uncle's wife always seem tense at family dinners? Why did my cousin's wife stop coming around after they got married? Why did no one ever talk about my estranged cousin, the one who had walked away from all of it? I shrugged it off. I had no real answers. Then she found the journal. It belonged to my grandfather, an old leather-bound book, filled with notes about family traditions, lessons for future generations. She wasn't snooping. She found it in a box of old things while organizing our storage. At first, she thought it was harmless history. Then she started reading. By the time I got home that evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table, the journal open in front of her, her face pale. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just asked, very quietly, if I had done the same thing described in those pages. I tried to downplay it. I told her it wasn't as serious as it sounded, that it was just tradition, that every man in my family had gone through it. She didn't react at first, just stared at me like she was trying to see through me. Then she asked me what my sacrifice was. I hesitated. Too long. That's when she got up, grabbed her bag and walked out the door. She spent the night at her friend's place, didn't answer my calls, didn't respond to my texts. The next morning she came back, but she wasn't the same. She didn't yell, didn't argue, just stood in the doorway and told me she didn't know if she could ever look at me the same way again. I tried explaining. I told her my father had done it. My grandfather, every man in our family. It wasn't about hurting anyone, or at least that's what we told ourselves. The truth was, the initiation was about proving you were willing to give something up. A friend, a job opportunity, a secret you'd never tell your wife. Every generation, the rules changed slightly, but the purpose remained the same, to remind us that no matter how much we loved someone, the family came first. She asked if I would have ever told her if she hadn't found that journal. I didn't have an answer for that. After that, she barely spoke to me. She moved through the house like a ghost, keeping her distance, answering in short, clipped sentences. It was like living with a stranger. I turned to my father for advice, hoping he'd have some wisdom, some way to fix things. He laughed. Said all wives struggle with it at first. Said it was part of their adjustment to the family. That my mother had been the same way, and she got over it. I thought about my mother then, how she had always been quiet at family gatherings, how she never pushed back against my father's word, how she had once told me, when I was younger, that sometimes love meant learning to accept things you didn't understand. I started to wonder if she had ever really accepted it at all. Claire wasn't adjusting, she was pulling away. Every day, a little further. One night, I caught her staring at me while I was brushing my teeth, like she was looking at someone she didn't recognize. When I turned to ask what was wrong, she just shook her head and went to bed. I tried asking my married cousins if their wives ever had issues with the tradition. Some said yes, but they got over it. Others just gave vague answers, shifting uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at me. Then I reached out to the cousin who had left the family. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He was hesitant at first, unsure if I was reaching out to drag him back into family affairs. It took multiple calls, and a promise that I wasn't trying to report back to my father before he agreed to meet. Even then, he kept his distance, only giving me vague advice at first, making me prove that I was truly ready to see the truth. The first thing he said when we sat down was, "You finally starting to question it." That was the moment I felt the first seed of doubt, but it wasn't enough to change everything. For days, I still clung to the belief that my father was right, that Claire was just overreacting. It took multiple conversations, painful silences, and a deeper look into my family's history before I started seeing the cracks for what they really were. Claire barely spoke to me for days, and when she did, it wasn't just anger. It was grief. I didn't fully understand it at first. To me, it was tradition. To her, it was a betrayal so deep that she questioned who I even was. One night, she finally looked me in the eye and asked, "Did you ever think about how this would affect me, or was I just supposed to fall in line like every other wife in your family?" I had no answer for that. When she did look at me, it wasn't the same. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was something worse. Then one evening, she grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started filling it. She wasn't rushing, just calmly folding clothes, stacking them neatly inside. I stood there, waiting for her to say something. When she finally zipped the bag shut, she didn't explain, didn't yell, just picked up her keys and walked out. She didn't tell me where she was going, but I already knew. Claire's best friend, Maya, had always been her safe place, the one person she turned to whenever something felt too big to handle alone. I waited an hour before heading over, hoping she'd had enough time to cool down. Maya answered the door. She was polite, but firm. Claire didn't want to see me. I could hear them talking inside, low voices, too far away to make out the words. Later, when Claire and I started speaking again, she admitted Maya had spent days helping her process everything. Maya didn't trust me, and she made it clear that if Claire took me back, I had to earn it. Maya didn't budge from the doorway, but after a few minutes she sighed and went to check. When she came back, she looked uncomfortable. Claire wasn't coming out. She didn't want to talk. She just needed time. I left, but I didn't go home. Instead, I called my mother. She listened, then laughed. Not in a mean way, just like she'd heard this before. Like it was expected. She told me wives always struggled with this at first. That my grandmother had cried for weeks after she found out. That my uncle's first wife had almost left. But in the end, she stayed, just like they always do. I asked what happened to my uncle's first wife. There was a pause. Then a vague answer. She just wasn't a good fit. I hung up feeling worse than before. The next morning, Claire still hadn't responded to any of my messages. No calls, no texts, just silence. I thought about going back to Maya's, but I already knew how that would go. Instead, I reached out to the married men in my family. Some of them brushed it off. Their wives had been upset at first, but eventually they moved on. That's just how things were. Others got quiet. A few admitted things had never been the same. Their wives stayed, but something changed between them. A distance they could never quite close. Some had even ended in divorce, but it was always the wife who was blamed for not understanding. And then there was my cousin, the one who left. We met at a small coffee shop out of town. I hadn't seen him in years. His hair was longer, his beard fuller, but his eyes were the same, sharp, like he was always on guard. He asked how much I knew. I told him everything. He nodded like he'd been expecting it. Then he told me what I should have realized a long time ago. The tradition wasn't about loyalty. It was about control. It wasn't about building strong marriages. It was about creating a divide. The initiation wasn't just a test. It was a statement that no matter how much we loved our wives, no matter how strong the relationship, the family came first. Always. And by the time the wives found out, it was already too late. They were already deep enough in the marriage. The family, the life we built together, that leaving wasn't easy. Some never found out at all. Others did, and it broke them. I left that conversation shaken. I didn't go home right away, just drove around for hours, trying to make sense of everything. By the time I pulled into the driveway, there was a text from Claire, one sentence. "If you defend them, we're done." I sat there for a long time, staring at the words, knowing exactly what they meant. I needed to talk to my father. The conversation went exactly how I should have expected. He didn't see a problem. Claire was overreacting. He told me to give her space, let her throw her tantrum, and eventually she'd fall in line like everyone else. I told him she might not. He just shook his head. If she really loves you, she'll accept it. If not, she was never one of us. I thought about Claire's face when she asked if I would have ever told her the truth. How she slammed the door when I hesitated. For the first time, my father's words didn't feel like comfort. I sent Claire another message, told her I wanted to talk, that I wanted to understand. She didn't ignore me this time. She laughed, bitterly. Then she sent one final message. "Either you leave them or I leave you." I stared at my phone at the ultimatum laid out in front of me. Everything I had been raised to believe was tied to this tradition. My entire life, my family, my identity. But now, for the first time, I wasn't sure if I even wanted it. Claire was still gone. No texts, no calls, nothing. The house felt too quiet without her, but there was no point in sitting around. I needed answers. I went back to the storage boxes where Claire had found my grandfather's journal. If that was hidden in old things, what else was? I started digging, flipping through dusty books, old documents, anything that looked like it might hold more history on this tradition. It didn't take long to find more. Old letters, notes from past generations, pages filled with instructions, who should be initiated, what should be sacrificed, how to handle wives if they pushed back. The more I read, the worse it got. There was a pattern. Almost every generation had at least one man whose marriage had failed after the initiation. Sometimes the wives left. Other times they just faded. The records stopped mentioning them, as if they had never existed. One note stood out, an old letter from my great-grandfather to his son, telling him that a man's duty is to his family first, and if a wife cannot accept that, she must be replaced. It wasn't just about loyalty, it was about making sure wives never had enough power to question the family's hold. I needed to talk to someone who had been on the other side of it. My uncle had been married before. It was never talked about, only mentioned in passing like a bad investment he had made when he was younger. His second wife, the one I knew growing up, was quiet, submissive, the kind of woman who never disagreed in public. I tracked down his first wife through social media. It took a few tries, but she finally agreed to meet. She didn't waste time with small talk. She had been young when she married my uncle. He had been charming, devoted, the perfect husband, until the initiation. After that, everything changed. He told her things had to be different, that his loyalty to the family came before everything, that there were rules she had to follow, and if she didn't, she would regret it. At first, she thought he was joking. Then she saw how serious he was. The fight started small. Why did she need to know everything? Why couldn't she just trust him? Why was she making such a big deal out of something that had been around for generations? Then came the punishments. Not physical, just isolation. Her calls to friends went unanswered. Family events became tense. She was no longer treated like part of the inner circle, just someone who was tolerated. She stayed for 3 years before realizing it would never change. When she left, the family erased her. She looked me in the eye and told me I had one chance to fix things before I became like my uncle. I left that meeting with one thought. I needed to talk to Claire. Maya was the one who answered the door. She wasn't friendly this time, just crossed her arms and told me I had 5 minutes. Claire was inside, sitting on the couch, arms crossed. She looked at me like she was waiting for me to say the wrong thing. I told her everything I had found. The letters, the history, the conversation with my uncle's ex-wife. She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't react. Then she asked the one question I had been dreading. What are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer yet. She stood up, grabbed her bag and told me she wouldn't wait forever. The next person I talked to was my father. I laid everything out, the journal, the letters, the conversations. He barely blinked, just leaned back and told me I was thinking too much, that I was letting my wife cloud my judgment, that this wasn't about hurting anyone, it was about protecting something bigger than myself. I asked if my mother had struggled with it. His face twitched, just for a second. Later that night, I asked my mother directly. She didn't deny it. She admitted she had never truly forgiven my father for what he had done during his initiation. She had stayed because she had nowhere else to go. I imagined myself in their place, 30 years from now, sitting at the dinner table with a wife who didn't love me, who stayed because she had no choice. Claire texted me the next day. She would talk to me if I was willing to cut off my family when she proved how toxic they were. I didn't agree right away. My father must have sensed something shifting, because the next morning he called me to his office. The door shut behind me, and he sat down like we were business partners instead of family. He told me this wasn't just about me, that my choices affected the family's strength, that if I turned my back on them I was nothing. Then he gave me a final warning: choose us or choose her. It wasn't even about Claire anymore. I could see it now. They didn't see her as my wife. They saw her as a threat. I went back to Maya's place that night. Claire opened the door, arms crossed, waiting. I told her everything. She let me in. But before I could sit down, she looked me in the eye and said, "I hope you choose freedom over loyalty." Because if I didn't, she was walking away for good. A week passed. Claire didn't answer my calls, no responses to my texts, just read receipts and silence. At first I thought she just needed time, but the longer it stretched, the more it felt like something had shifted, like she was already preparing for a life without me in it. Then my mother called. It was late, too late for a casual check-in. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was picking her words deliberately. She asked if I really thought I'd be happy without Claire. Before I could answer, she added that a marriage can survive anything, with forgiveness. She wasn't talking about Claire forgiving me. She was talking about me forgiving my family. I didn't respond, just listened as she reassured me that every marriage goes through trials, that traditions exist for a reason, that men before me had walked this path and turned out fine. Then she asked the real question. Do you really want to be without us? Not me and Claire, us and them. She wasn't worried about my marriage. She was worried about losing her son to the same thing that had taken my cousin away. The next day my father called. There was no careful wording, no soft tone, just a demand. come to your senses. He had heard I was wasting time trying to fix things with Claire instead of focusing on the bigger picture. I asked him directly, what if Claire wanted to be part of the tradition? What if she wanted to know everything? He laughed. A deep, genuine, amused laugh. Women don't have the stomach for real loyalty. That was the answer. Right there. It was never about keeping family strong. It was never about love or protection. It was about control. About making sure we never put anything above them. I had only one person left to talk to. My cousin, the one who had walked away. We met at the same coffee shop. This time he was more direct. They don't love us. They own us. I sat there staring at my untouched cup as he laid it all out. It wasn't just about tradition. It was about ensuring no wife ever had enough power to break the family's hold. It was why some marriages failed. Why some wives disappeared from the family records. Why our fathers treated their wives with an unspoken authority that no one questioned. I asked him why he left. He told me his wife had found out. She gave him a choice, her or the family. He chose her. The fallout was immediate. His father cut him off. His brothers stopped speaking to him. Even distant relatives treated him like a ghost. It wasn't just about leaving. It was about punishment. I asked if it was worth it. He didn't hesitate. I have a life now. A real one. I went home and sat in silence for hours. Claire finally responded that night. She didn't ask what I had decided. She didn't ask if I missed her. She just sent one message. If you're serious about fixing this, prove it. I didn't know where to start, so I started with therapy. The first session felt like nothing. Just answering basic questions, giving surface-level responses. The second session, the therapist started picking apart my family's dynamics, pointing out things I hadn't even thought about. By the third, it was clear I had been raised in a system of control. It wasn't normal. It wasn't tradition. It was a cage. For the first time, I said it out loud. The next day, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She wasn't angry. She was worried. She had found out about the therapy. She tried to frame it as concern, that I was letting outside influence poison my thoughts, that family traditions aren't meant to be dissected by strangers, that there was nothing wrong with the way we were raised, that my father loved me in his own way. I asked if she really believed that. She didn't answer right away. She left after that. But I already knew what was coming next. That night, my father showed up, no pretense, no small talk, just anger. Therapy was an insult. Therapy was weakness. Therapy was turning my back on everything they had built. He demanded I cut it off. I told him no. The argument exploded from there. It wasn't a conversation. It was a war. Every time I pushed back, he escalated. I was betraying them. I was letting my wife manipulate me. I was a disgrace. Then he gave me his final ultimatum. If you walk away from this family, you are no longer my son. I looked at him, waiting for hesitation, a crack in the anger, a moment where he might reconsider. There was nothing. I blocked his number that night. Claire texted me again the next morning. Maybe you are serious. The fallout started almost immediately. Blocking my father wasn't just cutting off one person. It was cutting off the head of the family, and he wasn't about to let that slide. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Some from relatives I barely spoke to. Some from cousins I had grown up with. The tone was the same across the board. Disbelief, disappointment, accusations. My father had sent a mass message to the entire family group chat, laying out his version of the story. According to him, I had been brainwashed. Claire was poisoning me. Therapy was filling my head with lies. He made it clear, I wasn't turning my back on him. I was turning my back on all of them. Some cousins blocked me outright. Others sent long-winded messages about loyalty and duty. A few just parroted my father's words, calling me selfish. I reached out to one of the cousins I was closest to, trying to have a real conversation. He ignored my first few messages, then finally responded with 3 words, "You made your choice." That was the moment I realized there was no middle ground. Later that day, Claire agreed to meet, not to talk things out, not to work on fixing things, just to have a conversation. She set the terms. Public place. No expectations. When I sat down across from her, she didn't look angry, just guarded. I told her everything. The mass message, the way my cousins had shut me out, the way my father had framed everything like I was the one destroying the family. She listened. Then she said something I hadn't fully considered before. My family wasn't angry because I hurt them. They were angry because they were losing control. The next day, my mother showed up at my door. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't making demands. She was crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind, just quiet tears. The kind that made it seem like she truly believed she had lost me. She kept saying I didn't understand what I was doing to them, that my father wasn't handling it well, that this was breaking the family apart. I asked her if she had ever been truly happy in the family. She didn't answer. I told her about therapy, about the things I was realizing. She shook her head, like she couldn't even process it. Then she begged me to stop. Not for my sake, for theirs. She left after that. No screaming, no threats, just heartbreak. I told my therapist about it at my next session. She called it control withdrawal. When a system is built on power, the moment someone stops obeying, the whole structure starts to crack. My family wasn't trying to bring me back because they missed me. They were trying to bring me back because they didn't know how to handle a version of me that wasn't under their thumb. A few days passed with nothing but silence. Then my uncle reached out. No anger, no accusations, just an invitation, a family gathering, a chance to talk things through. He framed it as a peace offering. If I came, we could move past this. Forget everything. I already knew what it was. A test. If I showed up, it meant I was still one of them. That I was willing to let them rewrite the narrative, pretend none of this ever happened. I told Claire about it. She didn't argue, didn't push, just gave me a choice. If you go, you're choosing them over us. I didn't go. Hours later, I got my father's response. Then don't bother coming back. That was it. No long-winded speech. No fake attempts to fix things. Just a final message making it clear. I was no longer part of the family. A few minutes later, I saw my name disappear from the family group chat. Then one final voicemail from my mom. Her voice was shaky. Please reconsider. I don't want to lose you. But I was already gone. For the first time in my life, I felt something I never expected. Not guilt. Relief. A week later, Claire agreed to have dinner with me. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't a fresh start, but before she left, she looked me in the eye and said, "We're not fixed yet, but I see you trying, and that means something." The silence from my family didn't last long. It never does. At first they acted like I was dead to them. No calls, no messages. My name scrubbed from the family group chat. It was like I had never existed. But then the cracks started to show. My uncle, one of the enforcers of the tradition, was struggling, without my father keeping everyone in line. Things were getting messy. Some relatives were whispering, asking too many questions. A few of the younger ones started pushing back. Then a message from my younger cousin. He was careful at first, asking if I was okay, how things were going. Then he got to the real point. "How did you do it? I think I want out too." He wasn't the only one. A few days later, someone leaked screenshots from the family group chat. Messages from my father, my uncles, proof of the way they tried to manipulate me, control me. Even screenshots of my mom telling them to handle it before I got too far. It spread fast. The younger cousins started questioning everything. Even some of the aunts, women who had spent decades in the family, began murmuring doubts. Then my father had his meltdown. He posted a long cryptic Facebook rant about betrayal and weak men. How tradition is dying because people today lack loyalty. It was clearly aimed at me, though he never said my name. The comments weren't what he expected. Some of the older generation backed him up, but others? Silence. A few of the younger ones liked the post but didn't comment. One of my cousins, the one who had cut me off first, actually unfriended him. And then at a family gathering, one of my cousins stood up and said it outright. "I'm done with this." No one spoke. No one moved. Then another cousin stood up. And another. My uncle tried to shut it down, but the damage was done. The foundation was cracking. Meanwhile, Claire and I were trying to rebuild. Slowly. She still kept her distance emotionally. Still wasn't ready to jump back into anything. But she started talking to me more. Small things at first. Then longer conversations. One night, she made it clear. "We still need to rebuild, but I'm willing to try." That was more than I had expected. I met up with my estranged cousin again, and for the first time it wasn't about me needing advice. It was about us figuring out how to move forward. We started talking more, supporting each other. He had been on his own for a long time, and now I realized I wasn't alone either. Then out of nowhere, I got one final message from my mother. "I'm proud of you, even if I can't say it out loud." That was it. No follow-up, no explanation, just that one sentence. And for the first time I knew, this wasn't just about me breaking free. This was the end of an era. I used to think my family was unbreakable, that the traditions were set in stone, that nothing could shake them. Now, I see it for what it really was. A system built on control, a foundation of fear, and it's finally starting to fall apart. I thought cutting off my family would mean the worst was over. I was wrong. The silence didn't last. It never does with people like them. First, it was just the usual guilt tripping from extended family. Relatives I barely spoke to suddenly reaching out, asking if I was okay. Then the real attack began. My father started spreading rumors. At first it was behind closed doors. Whispered conversations at family events, messages in private group chats. Then it went public. I started getting strange looks from people in my community, old family friends, even a couple of coworkers. That's when I found out what he was saying. I was mentally unstable. Claire had brainwashed me. Therapy had messed with my head. According to him, I wasn't thinking straight. I was sick, weak, broken, and the worst part, some people believed him. Then I got a call from my boss. Someone had sent an anonymous email about me, claimed I was unstable, a liability, tried to make it sound like I was dangerous. It didn't work. My boss saw right through it. He warned me that someone was trying to sabotage me but assured me my job was safe. Claire was furious when she found out. She had been patient through everything. Let me process things on my own. But this proved something she had suspected all along. It was never about love. It was never about love. It was never about family. It was about control. And the second they lost control of me, they went straight to destroying me. Then my mom sent a cryptic text. I had nothing to do with this. I wish things were different. No apology, no taking responsibility, just more of the same, standing by while my father ran the show. I tried confronting him. I didn't expect him to back down, but I needed to see if he had the guts to say it to my face. He barely looked at me, just sat there, arms crossed, and waited for me to speak. I laid everything out. The lies, the sabotage, the fact that he had tried to ruin my career just to keep me in line. He didn't argue, didn't deny it. Then he stood up, walked to the door and said, "I don't talk to traitors." That was it. I left without another word. The next day, my uncle reached out. He wasn't angry, at least not on the surface. He spoke carefully, like he was negotiating a deal, told me this didn't have to go any further. If I apologized publicly, admitted that I had been misled by outside influences, agreed that my family was right, they would take me back. He framed it like he was doing me a favor. I walked away without responding. Then the legal threats started. A letter from my father claiming I owed him money, that everything he had done for me growing up, the food, the clothes, the schooling, was a debt that I needed to repay. It wasn't real, just another scare tactic, but it showed how desperate they were getting. Claire's response was simple: "They'll never stop until you stop reacting to them." She was right. Then, another message from my younger cousin. "I think I want out too. How did you do it?" I sat with that for a long time. It meant everything was starting to crumble. My therapist put it into words I hadn't thought of before. "You're grieving a family that never truly existed." I wasn't losing the family I thought I had. I was finally seeing the family I actually had. My father and uncle tried one last move. A meeting to make peace. One final chance to fix things before I was truly cut off. I ignored it. The response was predictable. I was ungrateful. I had disgraced generations of men. I had betrayed my blood. I read the messages, deleted them, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty. Claire and I had dinner together that night. No serious talks, no rehashing the past, just a normal dinner. And for the first time in months, it felt like we had a future again. The foundation was starting to weaken, but it wasn't crumbling just yet. Some younger members were questioning things, but the elders doubled down, pressuring their sons to stay in line. My father and uncle still had their supporters, and while the grip was loosening, they fought to maintain control, using threats, manipulation and family finances to keep others obedient. It started with my younger cousin, the one who had quietly reached out, asking how I got out. He wasn't just thinking about leaving anymore, he was actively questioning everything. He wasn't alone. Over the next few weeks, more cousins started reaching out, some in private messages, some cautiously in person. It wasn't dramatic, at least not at first, just small questions. Did our fathers really believe in this, or were they just following orders? Did our grandfathers have happy marriages, or were they just tolerated? If this tradition was so sacred, why did so many of our mothers look so unhappy? A few of us created a private group chat, a place to talk openly, without fear of being monitored by the older generation. Stories started pouring in. Wives who had been forced into silence, marriages that fell apart the second a woman pushed back, cousins who had seen their own mothers cry behind closed doors, but were told it was normal. Then my uncle found out. He went ballistic. Angry voice messages, caps-locked rants, accusations of betrayal, of weakness. He blamed outside influences and modern thinking for poisoning the younger generation. But the more he raged, the weaker he looked. Claire watched it all unfold from a distance. One night, she sat across from me and said, "They're imploding because they know they're losing control." And she was right. The first major defection came from someone no one expected. One of my cousins, the one who had always been one of my father's biggest supporters, spoke up. He wasn't just walking away quietly. He was done. His exact words: "I won't raise my kids in this." It hit harder than anything I had done. Then the wives and girlfriends started pushing back. The ones who had been quiet for years. The ones who had learned not to challenge their husbands in public. A few started speaking up, asking why they weren't allowed to know more. Some flat out refused to let their children be part of it. The final blow came at a family gathering. It was supposed to be a standard event, a birthday, an excuse for the elders to reinforce their values. Then one cousin stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "This tradition isn't loyalty. It's control." Silence. Not the angry defensive kind, the stunned uncomfortable kind. The kind where people start looking around, wondering if anyone else agrees but is too afraid to say it. No one shouted him down, not even my uncle. The older generation was losing grip, and they knew it. Extended family started taking notice. The reputation my father and uncle had worked so hard to maintain was falling apart. They weren't seen as leaders anymore. They were seen as outdated. Then, inevitably, the elders turned on each other. My father and uncle, once inseparable in their mission to uphold the family's legacy, started blaming each other. My father accused my uncle of being too harsh, too extreme, of pushing people away. My uncle accused my father of being too soft, of letting his own son be the first to walk away. My mother stayed out of it, but a few nights later, I got a message from her. "I wish I had been as brave as you." That was it. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Meanwhile, therapy was working, the guilt was fading, the need for approval was disappearing. Then one night, Claire finally said the words I had been waiting for. I think I can trust you again. Not forgiveness, not a promise that everything was back to normal, but trust, a chance to rebuild. And I wasn't rebuilding alone. I was closer than ever to my estranged cousin, the one who had walked away years ago. And now I wasn't just looking out for myself. I was helping others leave, guiding them through what he had once guided me through. Then the final nail in the coffin. At another gathering, one of my younger cousins stood up, looked my uncle in the eye, and said, "I'm not following this nonsense." And this time the silence was deafening. No one defended the tradition. No one stepped up to enforce it. For the first time, it truly felt over. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. 1 year, a year since I walked away, a year since I cut the cord, since I let go of the idea that my family was something unbreakable, something I had to be part of. I haven't spoken to my father in 12 months. Not once. He still acts like I don't exist. And honestly, I'm fine with that. There were moments early on where I expected him to reach out, to at least try something, but he never did. He meant it when he said I was dead to him, and I meant it when I left. The family is fractured now, not just because of me, because of everything. The younger cousins, the ones who started questioning the tradition, never stopped. More and more of them have pulled away, distancing themselves from the old ways. Even some of the aunts, the women who had been trapped in this system for decades, have started to drift from the family's core. The tradition itself is dying. No new initiations have happened in months. The younger generation isn't as eager as they once were. But the tradition isn't dead yet. My uncle is still clinging to it, still gathering his loyalists, still trying to rebuild what's slipping away. It's weaker, yes, but not gone, not yet. The real battle is just beginning. He's desperate. He's still trying to revive it, still preaching about loyalty and family honor. But no one takes him seriously anymore. He's lost the respect he used to command, and the more he fights for it, the more pathetic he looks. My mother hasn't taken a public stance. She still plays her role, still stands beside my father at family gatherings, still acts like everything is fine. But I know she's quietly proud. I know because every once in a while, I get a text from her. Never anything obvious, just small things. "Hope you're doing well," or "Saw something today that reminded me of you." She won't openly defy my father, but I can tell she's watching. Claire and I are stronger than ever. A year ago, I wasn't sure if she'd ever fully trust me again. Now we're making plans for the future, things I never thought I'd get back. A home, a fresh start, a life without the weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. Therapy changed everything. I never realized how much damage my upbringing had done until I started unpacking it. The constant need for approval, the fear of stepping out of line, the way I had been conditioned to believe that love meant obedience. Now I see it for what it was, and I'll never go back. I've built something better, a found family. My estranged cousin and I talk regularly now. More than that, we've built a support system for others who left. There are more of us than I ever realized. People who were stuck in the same cycle, who thought they had no choice but to follow the rules. And my younger cousin, the one who asked me how I did it. He's thriving. He's in therapy. He's healing. He told me once that I saved his life, that if I hadn't walked away first, he never would have believed it was possible. My father, on the other hand, is alone. He's lost control of the family. The cousins don't listen to him anymore. The aunts whisper about how harsh he's become. The younger generation isn't following in his footsteps, but he won't admit he was wrong. His pride won't let him. The extended family, the ones who used to admire him, the ones who used to think he was a strong leader, they don't see him that way anymore. He's not respected. He's just a bitter old man clinging to the past. And the younger generation, we're done with the toxicity. We're the first to reject the tradition, and it feels like real progress. The cycle is breaking. For the first time in generations, the hold my family had on its sons is slipping away. Claire and I are moving forward. We're planning our next steps, a home, a future together, things I once thought were impossible. And finally, after everything, I take the last step. I go through my phone, through the old texts, the saved voicemails, the messages from people who told me I was a traitor, that I was ungrateful, that I was nothing without them. I delete them all, because I don't need their approval. I don't need them. A year ago, I was terrified of losing my family. Now I see the truth. I didn't lose anything. I gained myself, and I'm never looking back.